Marco, you came to Stanford a few years ago after doing your residency training at back east. Tell us what attracted you to Stanford, and then also why you decided to stay here for your first faculty job.
So when I was looking for fellowships, I really was very interested in a program that offered some training in the genetics of cardiovascular disease. Now, I don't want to date myself, but this is many years ago, and there really weren't that many. And Stanford really does have this spirit of innovation and being really at the forefront of cutting edge clinical and basic research. At the time, there really were only a handful of programs that offered this kind of training. And Stanford was one of only 4 institutions that had a Reynolds Foundation grant. And when I came and I spoke to the people here, I was just very excited about all of the work that was going on. And I knew this had to be the place that I had to come to.
You've launched an extremely successful independent career now. Tell us a little bit about what you're doing in mobile device and genetics. And, you had a New England Journal paper not too long ago, which is really fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah, no, there's a lot that's really exciting that's going on. I think, just touching on this idea that we really want to be at the forefront of what's happening in clinical, translational, and basic science. I'm one of the overarching goals that I've always had is to really understand disease processes better. And I knew that genetics and what we could learn from clinical genetics could get us one step closer. And so when I finished my training, at the time there was a real drive to grow the Stanford Center for Inherited Cardiovascular Diseases, and I thought it was quite unique in that. While there are other centers where there might be a disease-specific genetics clinic, HCM or LongQT, this is one of the few places that really made an effort to have a more comprehensive center where there were multiple specialists in each of the subdivisions of cardiovascular genetics. And I saw an opportunity to lead the inherited arrhythmic disease clinic. And I think it's really important, especially in this kind of clinic, to have access to others in the other subspecialties. There's so much overlap between inherited arrhythmia and cardiomyopathy that I think it's quite crucial to have that kind of relationship. And it's really a very open and collaborative spirit that we have here. And now, as you know, Josh, we're one of the biggest centers with the most cardiovascular genetic counselors, and I think it's really reflected on the quality of care that we're able to deliver to our patients.
Yeah, I think that's really true. Now, you have one foot in the genetics field. You also have another foot in the big data field and the mobile device area, which is rapidly expanding. Tell us about the work that you have going on in that regard.
Sure. So one of the other exciting things about Stanford, I think, is that we are in a very unique part of the country. We are in the Silicon Valley. What that means is that we have, just by proximity, we have access to a lot of tech-related fields and companies that are interested in health innovation. And so, you mentioned the New England Journal paper that we just had that was using the Apple Watch to help identify people with irregular heartbeats that could ultimately have atrial fibrillation. And so, just because we are where we are, I think we had access to these kinds of companies that are interested in health innovation. And very quickly we were able to conduct one of the largest studies that looked for atrial fibrillation using mobile technology. And I think that's just one example. I mean, we are also working with other companies and other technologies, and I think the future is quite bright in terms of what we're going to be able to do with these relationships.
Tell us a little bit about, the diversity within the EP subspecialty here at Stanford, and what you look forward to over the next few years.
Yeah, so when I started, Josh, it was really only 3 or 4 electrophysiology attendings when I did my EP training, and Dr. Wong, Paul Wong, who has really worked very hard to bring in a lot of talent, and he's grown the program now to 10 electrophysiologists. And so, what that means is that several of us come from different backgrounds with different interests. We have those who are really interested in AFib research, ventricular tachycardia research, device research, and there's some that are more clinically oriented, and others that are more sort of device and innovation oriented. One of the really other unique aspects of the environment here, and this is just an example that exemplifies this, is that there is a biodesign program, and as you know, Paul Wong helps lead the efforts there. But the idea is that with this biodesign program, you're able to bring together people from different backgrounds and resources to help innovate and come up with ideas and solutions to existing problems, and create new technologies around those. And so again, I think that's just an example of the environment, because there is a lot of interest in innovation, and within EP there are some of us who are interested in innovating in new devices and new approaches to challenging questions in electrophysiology.
You've now gone from being a mentee to being a mentor of several of these fellows. Talk to us a little bit about how the fellows, both in EP and in general fellowship program, benefit from that spirit of entrepreneurialism.
It's really one of my favorite aspects of being where we are is that we just get the most talented trainees, from the medical student level or even the undergrad level to the advanced subspecialty fellows. And the really nice thing, and this happened to me when I was training, is that I very quickly realized that the environment here is again, because it's such an innovative spirit around here, it tends to be a little more open. And what I mean by that is that it's easier to walk into, in the pre-COVID era, it was easier to knock on somebody's door and walk in and say, hey, what are you working on? Is there something I can do with you? And that just seemed so seamless. And I think, again, it just goes to show you that there are many opportunities. And one of the other things that I thought was easy to do was to form collaborations across different divisions and departments. And so, again, I think that's something else that spurs a lot of the innovation. Now, for fellows, my approach, and I think many of us have a very similar approach here, is that we do believe that mentorship is critical in the development of a research career, especially early on. And at least in my laboratory, when I take on a mentee, it really does revolve around a project that they lead, and I think that's pretty critical. We have access to so much data, and there's so many questions. I think it's not a question of whether or not you can or cannot do a project. It's just a question of which of the many projects you have time for, and can you get excited about.
Right now, you're sitting in front of a Zoom background with the brand new hospital. Tell us about how that brand new hospital is expanding the EP group's ability to deliver, high quality care.
Sure. So, one of the aspects that I think makes a program strong is by no means the most important thing, but I think one of the aspects that makes a program stronger is size, right? So, by having more lab space, by being able to see more patients in clinics and having more inpatient beds to see these patients, we can bring more people. We can bring in more people with broader sets of interests. And so the idea is that by doing that, we have more of a diversification of interests in research, and from the epidemiological, clinical aspects all the way to the basic, more basic science aspects. So just by having the ability to do more and see more and expand, I think that really translates into an advantage for trainees here because they have more options.
About something that's really important to you, which is diversification of our faculty and bringing in groups to be cardiology faculty that are pretty traditionally underrepresented. I love a story that we had a few years ago where you told me that you're one of the only Spanish-speaking electrophysiologists in all of California, which is telling in some ways. Tell us a little bit about how we're changing that at Stanford and what kind of steps we're taking to make a big difference in that regard.
Yeah, so I think there's a lot to say here. This has been a problem, I think, for a long time, and when we really think about what the goals are of what we're doing, and by we I mean Stanford as an institution, which encompasses Stanford Medicine and the hospital. Really, we are a service-oriented community. So we're here to serve our community, and by community I mean the people around us, and the service goes beyond just clinical care. I mean that's the centerpiece of what we do. But we are also responsible for asking the clinical questions that need to be asked, and that our community needs the most. And so I think in order to deliver those services the best, you do need to have people in your institution that are from those communities that can ask the right questions, that can deliver the clinical care in the right language and in the right sort of cultural context. And I think the best way to do that, again, is by having people who come from within those communities. And so, we are we're in an environment where we have a pretty large Hispanic population. About a quarter of the population in this area is Hispanic. Many of the people around here only speak Spanish, and so I think when you and this goes for not just Stanford but many academic centers around the country. When you look at the makeup of the racial and ethnic distributions, it's quite different from what the community is. And I think that I'll give you an example of what the result of that is. If you take our world, where we study the genetics of cardiovascular disease, you look at just the people who've been genotyped in the U.S. and by far the vast majority are Caucasian. There are very, very few Hispanics, very, very few African Americans who have been genotyped. And so, and this becomes particularly important in a field like genetics. And so we don't understand the genetics of cardiovascular disease in Hispanics and African Americans because we just haven't studied them as well. So that's just an example. And I think by increasing the diversification of our faculty, of our researchers, of our clinicians, we will be able to better deliver care for our communities. And that's ultimately what we're here to do.
You epitomize a lot of what I admire in physician scientists from Stanford. You have a translational aim, you have a clinical footprint. And if you look right over your right shoulder, you can't do this because you're on the virtual background, but you have Sand Hill Road there, you have entrepreneurialism. If you turn off your right shoulder about 100 yards, you're in the School of Genetics, Engineering, etc. Tell us about how you've been able to weave these various collaborations through your research and what the benefit has been for you.
I think again this goes back again to that idea of the entrepreneurial spirit, right? So I think that one of the things that we're poised to do well here in this area is to start collaborations with these consumer tech companies, with our engineers, and we've done both, in order to think of new ways to deliver care. And I think right now is actually a particularly important time in history where we have the opportunity to do that. Several people have asked me, if it's really fair that we are using technologies like smartwatches to study things like atrial fibrillation, because there just are a lot of people who, not everybody can afford a smartwatch right now. But the reality is that these technologies are going to become less expensive and more ubiquitous. I mean, the same thing was said about smartphones. And now you look around the world, there are many people who have a smartphone who don't have electricity in their homes, So I think ultimately, if you look at the long run, these technologies are going to help us democratize research and bring research to people who otherwise would not be able to participate in research. And that's another sort of direction that I'd like to head into, to really, because that was one of the ideas behind these virtual studies, is that you no longer need to go to a hospital or a brick and mortar building in order to participate in research. You can go straight to the participants and include a much larger and broader set of participants. So I think that's just an example of the kind of thing that you can do when you have the ability here at Stanford to collaborate with the bioinformatic department to work with our information technology services that can handle big data. I mean, and our data scientists who have the experience to do so, and we can do that here.
The preceding program is copyrighted by the Board of Trustees of the Leland Stanford Junior University. Please visit us at med.stanford.edu.